Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
So welcome everyone to Bereavement Miracles. This is Mike Frey, the author of Bereavement Miracles, this 12-step program of unity and hope. You have to bear with me today, folks. I'm a little under the weather. I got a chest infection, so if I cough, I do have a pillow right here. I'm going to bury my head into it while Mike speaks. So I'm just really going to facilitate the program today. And as you know, this program is a 12-step program in a systematic way, approaching grieving and mourning in the light of Christianity. And so with that being said, the whole program is based on unity and hope. So the program's aim is to help us, as most of you already know, is to answer three questions. Why things happen the way they do, how we can get better as a communicable society, and who is the source and summit to our spiritual happiness. And within this story today, we'll hear from Mike. We'll see how his life is, as we will hear, unfolding, and how he is, his perspective on things have grown. Even Mike has, and he'll share with you his story of his daughter Sophia, who was born a stillbirth. But before we get into that, I'm not going to be taking any calls today, so we're going to dive right into this because I do have many questions for Mike. If you want a copy of Bereavement Miracles, you can go to enroutebooksandmedia.com and look under spiritual books, and you'll see Bereavement Miracles. Now, you can also order it through Amazon Smile. And why Smile? Well, I just got an update today that my last, I think, quarter through Amazon, the things that I buy, $116 went to Holy Apostles College and Seminary, which is a nonprofit college seminary in Cromwell, Connecticut. So they do get a little bit of the proceeds of anything that I do buy. So if you do buy a book or anything, sign up for Amazon Smile and designate Holy Apostles College and Seminary to receive that little bit of profit each and every month to help us through the formation of our seminaries into priests. Now, today I'm not running on YouTube. We'll try that next week, but I am having troubles with the feed with that. But you can certainly listen to this once it's uploaded, which it will shortly be, on WCATradio.com, and you will find all the uploads. Again, that's WCATradio.com. And folks, I was listening to, while preparing for this talk by Mike today, listening to Father Billy talk about his new book that I'm going to be interviewing in about a month from now. And so there's a lot of uploads that you can obtain free through the WCATradio.com. And you can certainly find that link with enroutebooksandmedia.com as well. So the preamble, as you already know, but let me just go over this for anyone new joining us. Bereavement Miracles is a fellowship of men, women, and there are at times children who share one common connection, the loss of a loved one. The goal of this 12-week program is that in the midst of sorrow, one finds greater peace, joy, happiness, and a sense of closure. Now, the only requirement for this fellowship is to have an open heart and mind and a desire to help others in recovery. The ability to let go and move forward with one's life will take time and effort, but if you stick with it, you'll soon find that the fellowship within these rooms or on the air, and while we're listening to Mike today, is gathered centered in Christ, who is the summit of spiritual healing and well-being. Again, this is a 12-step program where I'll read how it works, and then I'm going to forego reading the steps today. But before I move along, join me in reciting the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, on page 12, this is how this program works. Within this fellowship, you will find unity, friendship, and a real sense that you're not alone. The fruits of this fellowship will encourage you to identify those same common experience in dealing with the death of a loved one. It is a hope that the guidance of this program inspires you to rely upon Christ as a means to a full recovery. Now, the sense of grief can often be accompanied by guilt, loneliness, and remorse associated with your loss, which can be very traumatic and last for a long time. You'll find that through the caring and sharing of each other's personal stories, your state of mourning will eventually improve, because all things are possible through him who strengthens me, and that his presence will fill you with joy and peace. We affirm that you have not been abandoned, and God is indeed by your side. We, Mike and I, understand what you're going through. Together, by sharing openly, you will begin to trust in God's familial love and be not afraid. Therefore, allow the sacramental healing of the Holy Spirit's love to bring reconciliation to you. Now, Bereavement Miracles is a simple program. It's designed to help us find the mystical body of the Church, which lives in the common good of one another, emanating from the heart of Christ. As we go through these steps of recovery, we will have a new sense that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. The loss of a loved one is one of the most difficult and complex issues that we will ever face. It's not easy. What we will achieve by working these steps is the understanding that what we are experiencing is normal, and we should not try to preoccupy ourselves with mundane activities in the hope that the pain and hurt will magically disappear or simply go away. We encourage you to talk about your feelings so that others can help you heal. Remember, God does not ask us to understand, but just to believe, one step at a time. Believe because I believe will tether us to a higher power of love and goodness far beyond our comprehension. God truly knows what we are going through. He deeply cares for us, so much so that he died for us so that we may have peace and share in his glory. But many have exclaimed while in the grieving process, there is way too much grief and pain. I don't know if I can manage to get through all this. Do not be discouraged. No one expects anyone to recover overnight. You begin by sitting and allowing others to carry your burden so that you can begin the process of recovery. Remember, no one among us has been able to maintain a state of emotional balance throughout this experience. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines and permit Christ to heal our sorrows. These steps are a process in getting us back on our feet again. Spiritual progress is what we strive for. Only in Christ are we made perfect. Through him and with him and in him, we are made whole for all eternity. Lastly, don't give up. Together we will get through this difficult time, and we will develop a manner of living that is meaningful and filled with hope and unity. We will develop a true reliance upon Christ as our loving God, one body, one spirit in Christ. All right. So, Mike, before we begin, I just wanted to share with our listeners, every week I read the thought for the day, March 25, in Sarah Young's Jesus Calling book, and it's a phenomenal little book, Mike, that I give out. I buy them used on Amazon Smile, and I hand these out to people in my own bereavement groups.
Okay.
But she says on March 25, a grateful attitude becomes a gird through which you perceive life. Gratitude enables us to see the light of my presence shining on all your circumstances. Cultivate a thankful heart, for this glorifies me and fills you with joy. All right. So today, folks, we have a special guest, Mike Flood, who has written a book. It's titled, Where Are You? Finding Myself in My Greatest Loss. Welcome, Mike, and it's great to have you.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Oh, it's great. Folks, just to give you a little bit of background, I'm going to do less talking. Mike's going to do more talking, but I just wanted to kind of preempt this discussion. Mike is married to Tara and has three beautiful daughters, Sophia, Michelle, Charlotte. I don't know Charlotte, Ann, or Judith's middle name, but Charlotte and Judith.
It's Charlotte Mary and Judith Josephine.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm just writing that down.
Okay.
So, Mike has written a book, folks, and I'm hoping that you will be able to identify with Mike's story. Now, this will be downloaded onto that program that I told you, the WCATradio.com, under Monday, under Bereavement Miracles. So you have to kind of swim through the pages, and you'll see it, and you'll be able to listen to it at any time. So, Mike, your book is based on Sophia, your firstborn, who was stillbirth. Is that right?
That's right. That's right, yes.
And how many years ago was this?
10 years ago. It was
10 years ago.
more than 10 years now. It's just over 10 years. December of 2018 was 10 years.
Wow, okay. Tell us, Mike, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, the kind of work you do, the activities you enjoy, and things that you're involved in.
Sure. Well, I am, first and foremost, obviously a family man. I don't know if I should say obviously, but I am a family man. So I am a husband and a dad. Those are my number one priorities and my number one activities. I think if anybody asks me, what do you like doing, I kind of just shrug and say, I don't know, whatever the kids are doing, whatever my wife and kids are doing, that's what I want to do. Yeah. So what kinds of things do we love? Going to the beach together, summer beach, winter activities, lots of snuggling, lots of blankets and things like that in the cold weather. Summer is obviously beach and pool. We love going to our, Tara and my parents' home. My wife is from New Jersey, so going out to see my in-laws and the mommy side grandparents, and seeing my folks are nearby in Long Island, where we're from, where we live in New York. So visiting them, that kind of stuff is fun for us. That's what we enjoy doing. We love going to the zoo as a family. I don't know, things like that. Personally, any chance I get to be outside or outdoors, whether it's mowing the lawn or walking in the preserve around the block from my house, the nature preserve, I love being outside. Camping is one of my all-time favorite activities. I get to do it far less than I used to because I don't think the women in my life enjoy it. So we'll get them around. Maybe when they get a little bit older, the girls will enjoy it a little bit more. But we'll see. But that's me. I'm a pretty simple person, I think. I love listening to music. I love reading. That's pretty much me as far as how I spend my time. Professionally, I am a teacher. I teach at a Catholic high school on Long Island. I teach 11th and 12th grade. I teach literature and writing. I run the school paper here, and I also run the, I guess we call it an arts magazine, poetry, photography, paintings, drawings, things like that. I try and get the kids involved, and writing is the big thing I hope to inspire in the kids around the building.
Yeah. My first impressions, Mike, with your book was the man touching the finger of God.
Okay.
Yeah, the Michelangelo's.
The Michelangelo painting, right.
Working. Yeah, I was really touched by your book and how you use spacing in between each line to give us time to digest what you're saying and think about things and ponder. I thought it was a dynamic book, and I know that it's going to be published in this coming fall. Is that correct?
That's right. Yes.
Good.
I'm obviously excited about that. I hope, but I hope this funny. You call it dynamic, and I think that's maybe the best praise, or if it's not praise, it's commendation or whatever of the book that I could ask for. That dynamic, I think mostly because I hope anyway that anybody that reads my experience sees that there has been a change. There has been a dynamic that has occurred for me. And I hope that the book does convey that there is a progression of thoughts and feelings throughout the book, and sometimes those thoughts and feelings can be difficult to write in the first place and to read or listen to in the second, and everybody needs a little time to digest some of the thoughts and feelings. People that have lost a child, a baby, sometimes it's difficult to really take in what the bereaved are saying, So I hope it is dynamic. I remember when you called me a couple of weeks ago to schedule this, the first time we actually spoke, and you said, well, I'm reading your book, and I really think I really like it. I think it's great. But then you stopped, and you're like, I don't know if that's the right word. I don't want to say great, but that's the dilemma of even writing it. I don't want to say, oh, wow, good book, like you're reading a Stephen King novel or something, That's not what it is, So dynamic, I like that word. I think I'm going to start using it.
Well, if I can, I don't want to talk about me at all here, but because I am severely dyslexic, reading things is very challenging for me.
Okay.
I get tremendous headaches and stuff like that. And even with that being said, writing with the style that you have, it comes very naturally, as though you're just talking to me across a table with a cup of coffee, and I'm able to follow you. There are some books that are very challenging because my brain is wired a certain way, but your book flows, and that's a very it's a very dynamic
well, thank you.
Writing skills. So, Mike, I'm going to go through this book a little bit succinctly, and just feel if I am going where I should not, or you just I don't want to certainly rile up any ill feelings or anything that you might not want to talk about. That's certainly okay here. Okay.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
I'm going to probably mention the page number for our future listeners, that when they get the book, they can refer to some of the pages that I've put down here. So in your prologue,
please, yeah,
you stated that you wanted to write a book for a long time, and on page 3 you said that to start to understand your nakedness. What nakedness are you referring to?
Shame, I think, and if I'm trying to find the spot myself as I'm looking through on a digital text here of the manuscript. I think shame. I think vulnerability. Those things. As being this open about loss and my life is not something that I really embraced at first, So to write a book, so I've always wanted to write a book, right? And I was looking for the good story, the great fiction. And, it's interesting now that I've engaged this as my first real book, my first project. I think that I was afraid to share with people my real thoughts or feelings. Fiction is one thing. I could write anything in fiction, and it's not me. It's not real. And I realized that was the writer's block. I think that probably the first rule of writing is write about what you know, and I never was. And when I finally undertook this project, I realized that, wow, I have really got to bear myself right now. And for the first time, sort of accepting that and writing in that way, it came very naturally. And it felt good to kind of let go a little bit of fear, shame, those kinds of things,
Well, just to give you a little bit of background of myself, is that my capstone project when I attended Holy Apostles College and Seminary for my master's degree.
Okay.
I developed a 12-step program similar to AA because I've been a member there for 35 years.
Okay.
But I've always had on the back burner writing about my sister Michelle, and that's what this book is dedicated to, for my sister Michelle. And that's this process of writing helps us to kind of like prioritize a lot of thoughts that are just kind of thrown into a soup. And we're able to kind of succinctly write these things down so that we can move forward, not let go, per se. Like when people say, I want to move on, that automatically throws it in a kind of a dark place. But when you say you move forward, it's that you've organized some of these thoughts and feelings in their proper context, and that you're able now to be more of a channel of God's peace rather than being all channeled up inside, because there was no way to voice all of this feeling that you have for Sophia. Is that right?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah. So on page 4, you say that this exercise is forcing you out of your ego, anger, and loss. Would you like to tell us what that means?
Well, I think that after some serious thought about this, I guess, I've realized that I've probably had, sadness for most of my life, and my sadness as a man or a boy predated any substantial loss as far as death in my life, right? So I think that when I started to recognize that losing a baby devastated me and my wife, that we were both deeply, deeply hurt by this, but I was acting out maybe in ways that weren't indicative of sadness or loss. They were rage and bitterness, and I discovered maybe that I was, I don't want to say using, but misplacing anger. And I think that thinking about this, I said, wow, that's, it's important that I've kind of discovered this, I hope. And now, obviously, the next step, obviously, is to discover and adjust the way I deal with my sadness whenever it might come up, or whenever I deal with an obstacle or a challenge in life, is to deal with it in a way that I would say is fatherly. That if I have dealt with now, or am dealing with my loss, Sophia namely, in a way like I have to remember that she's my daughter, and I have to deal with this in an appropriate way. I hope that I can now use that so if I'm stuck in traffic, or if, my wife and I don't agree on something, it's like I can't behave out of anger. It's got to be a thoughtful response, and one that in the end is, I feel like this is probably cliche to a lot of people, but to me it was a discovery, but I have to behave from a place of love. And that's where I think this book really came from. The book was not written in rage or anger. Certainly there's sadness in the book, and that is the origin of it. But in the end, the book, my book, is reaching out. It's love.
Yeah, so this you answered part of the second question I was going to ask. So then You're basically saying that now at this age, your perceptions to understand life in relationship to past events, to this particular experience of loss, has given you a deeper appreciation for the meaning of joy and its transcendental connection with wisdom, connecting yourself with the past, the present, and certainly the future. Is that right?
Yes, without a doubt. Wisdom, you have to learn a little. When you learn a little, you have some insight, and maybe it's, I don't know where you get the insights. There are insights to be had all over, and I think that that's part of the book, is showing the different places. I've picked a little something up here or there. Maybe it was something somebody said, or a kindness somebody performed for me. Maybe it was something, I did out of anger that I stopped and I said, see, now I shouldn't have done that, and I learned, so wisdom probably first. I got to learn a little, and then when I learn a little, and then joy, I hope it comes from it. Yes, without a doubt, wisdom and joy, or I hope the means and the goals.
Mm-hmm. So on page 17, you commented that people feel unworthy of joy while they grieve. Why do you think so, and why do you feel worthy today? What makes it right?
That's a good question. Oh boy.
Well, this is going to be an exercise, Mike.
Yeah, no kidding. Holy mackerel. That is a good question. Okay. Why, when we are grieving, and some griefs more than others, but I would think no grief is exclusive. Let's say, again, I would use the word shame. There's guilt, or I shouldn't say guilt, because we were not guilty of our daughter's death. We did not cause it in any way. We felt shame. So shame is, not actual guilt, right? So shame is the embarrassment we felt. Why couldn't we protect the baby? Why couldn't we take care of the baby? What did I do wrong? Did I stress Tara out? Did I cause this in some way? Now, obviously, or I shouldn't say obviously, but the answer is no. But when it happens, you certainly feel that way. And now, like I said, people who have suffered a stillbirth, a fetal demise, whatever you want to call it, or an infant's death, these are some of the most, shame-laden grief experiences. The one thing that we want to say we can do is take care of our child, and to the world it might seem like we didn't, so we can feel embarrassed by that, And I say, but that embarrassment isn't exclusively ours. Think of how many elderly parents. So you have an elderly parent who passes away, right? And, maybe I should have put her in a home. Maybe I should have kept him home with me. Maybe I should have given him a live-in nurse or something like that. And we go through the same what-ifs and I should-haves. No matter what the death is or the relationship is, it's got to do probably in the end with some kind of unfulfilled love, that you didn't get a chance to do the thing you wanted, and so you feel shameful about it. You know what I mean? So that's the shame, I think, at the time, and that shame can probably last. I mean, I guess it's possible that it could last forever. If you don't deal with it, if you don't accept it could last forever. But why do I feel entitled to joy now? I don't know. I could tell a long story and give you a long answer. I'll try and give you the short version. I don't know. I got a beautiful wife. She loves me to death. She's better to me than I deserve. I got my little girls here with me that are just awesome. I got family and friends that are good to me and care for me. At some point. And the death of a child is all-encompassing. I mean, it's everything. You can't think of the world anymore without thinking of your baby, and in that way, it can shatter what you thought you knew. But in some way, afterwards, I feel like I had to train myself. To make the answer short, I feel like I had to train myself and say, all right, what's good in my life right now? And you start to tally up what's good. And some people have a harder time seeing that than others, and I at times have a very hard time seeing what's good in life through no fault of life. It's me in my mind. I sometimes look at life through a very shadowed lens, and I got to count up all the good things. And sometimes it's an actual exercise of laying in bed or sitting in the car and really going through. All right, what's good? And it's almost like counting them off. I got this. I got this. I got this. I got this. I think of all the horror stories. This could have happened. This could have happened. This could have happened. All the things that make me feel negative, and I stop and I say, "See, it didn't happen. I thought it was going to happen. It didn't happen." And I got to train myself. And I think that like the old expression, "Count your blessings." I've got a lot of blessings, so I think that's part of the process of my finding or feeling like I can experience joy.
Right, and so you're basically, from what I hear, is that you're saying you're that part of the wisdom, the Serenity Prayer, the wisdom to know the difference. This is part of that process of grieving, that you can understand the things that you can change, but there are also other things that you can't, but that gives you that wisdom to know the difference and to accept things, even though we don't want to accept them. It can give us some kind of state of balance. That's good. So, Mike, you made mention that people's id protects them from this joy. Why do you think people react that way?
I don't know. Sometimes, sometimes in my book, I am indicating I'm trying to describe what happened, and not always without any real knowledge as to why things happened, or this was my experience or my feeling, and I don't exactly know why. But I would say I think our, whatever the expression I used was, our id kicks in or something like that, and I think that it's a reflex.
Yeah.
I think it's a reflex. It is like blinking the eyes when a speck of dirt pops up at you, or putting your arms up when somebody is coming too quickly to you. It's a reflex. It's right. I think that there's got to be some emotional mechanism and that says, all right, I got to protect you right now. Numbness, this idea that when you suffer a loss, a lot of people want to curl up and stay home and all that kind of stuff, and that might, as much as that's not good for a prolonged amount of time, it is probably very good immediately, to kind of just, all right, go where it's comfortable, go where I feel safe, give myself some space. I think that that's probably part of the healing mechanism, The problem is, and this is with any life, whether you suffered loss or not, if you live in your id for too long, there's no real growth, there's no real dynamic in life. You won't get relationships. If you live in your id, you're just protecting yourself all the time. All you would do is eat and sleep. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not an expert, but by any stretch of imagination, I'm not trained as a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or anything. But in my experience, it felt like it felt like a reflex. That's the way I would put it. Right. It felt like a reflex.
In step 4 in Bereavement Miracles, one of the steps that I talk about is making a searching and fearless examination of conscience, and that's what I go through, is understanding the subconscious, the id, the reflex mode of action and stuff. And we are basically creatures of circumstances, not particularly of our environment, though that is a factor, but circumstances. So those circumstances, if they are good or evil or indifferent, it kind of pre-programs us to handle certain situations as they arise. So on page 22, you said, after Sophia's departure, perhaps the trickiest thing to navigate is the question of value. Philosophical arguments abound regarding the nature and value of life, particularly unborn life, but also critical life, disabled life, end of life, terminal life, and vegetable life, and so on. But it's useless for me to explore those here, because to Tara and me, Sophia had value. Even if that value was limited to potential, she had value. So I am aware a potential conflict between our assessments of Sophia's value and others, and that can be hurtful. So what can be hurtful that others may or may not have an understanding of value from a spiritual sense, that all life is sacred?
Sure, absolutely. I'm brought up Catholic. I have a Catholic view of the world, but it's not limited to. It doesn't have to be limited to a religious value, right? So Tara and I conceive, a baby is growing. There are physical changes, obviously. You know that the baby is there. We have an ultrasound. We hear heartbeats. We get pictures, right? So we get all of that stuff. And we start planning. And we start nesting, right? We start thinking about, all right, where are we going to live? We need a new house. We can't live in an apartment anymore. It's a one-bedroom apartment. We need to buy a home. We need to move, right? I mean, it doesn't take long after conception or after that first, pregnancy test or that first ultrasound. It doesn't take long, or it didn't take long for us to say, all right, well, what about college? Where is she going to go to? Where is the baby going to go to school? You start. That's all value to me. That's all of that thought, all of those hopes and dreams. They have value. You tell a kid that wants to go to such and such college. You tell a senior in high school that wants to go to such and such college, and this kid gets rejected, and you say, "Oh, but I really wanted to go to Yale, whatever. I don't know, whatever. I really wanted to go to Yale. Well, but you didn't really have it, so." There's no value. Yeah, but it was everything I wanted. You try and tell that kid that dream was valueless or that hope was valueless, and that would be probably a misguided way to try and help that kid deal with not getting into that school. Now, I'm not comparing child loss to getting rejected from a college. I'm just saying that just because you don't have a thing doesn't mean it doesn't have value, right? Okay, so in the book, I guess I'm trying to make that point first. Now, after that, the struggle is, I think, sometimes. And I'm not pointing fingers, right? And this is part of my being open to joy, Mike, is like not judging how people may have misstepped in dealing with our grief, But, people don't see the baby. Nobody saw her except for me and Tara and a couple of nurses, a doctor and a couple of nurses. We're the only people that saw her. A lot of people... seeing is believing, and in order for somebody to have a value, they need to experience, they need to see the child, they need to see the child run, they need to see the human being do something, right, or have something, or whatever it is, and that can be problematic because, well, I use, like, for example, people say, oh, well, you'll have another baby. You'll get pregnant again. And that's really, I guess, misguided or it hurt anyway, because I said, no, that doesn't make me feel better, she was my daughter. She's gone. She's not replaceable. Sophia Michelle's not replaceable. I held her. You don't need to have seen her, but I held her, Tara and I saw her and touched her, and I am not blaming anybody, but especially in the case of infant stillbirth, right? Fetal demise, stillbirth, right? It's difficult for a world, because it's horrifying to the world to see that this most wonderful thing in life can happen, right? That's scary for people. One, but the other thing is I just don't think they recognize that there was a baby there. We delivered the baby, so that's a conflict, and the conflict I'm hoping to point out is, what death is a good death? And that's going to be like your healthy, long-lived parent or grandparent who has a peaceful death at home or in a bed. That's the death everybody's very happy about and everybody can talk about. But it's like I'm really want to make sure that I'm not excluding anybody's experience, because it's not an exclusive experience for the parent of a stillborn. The idea is that all deaths are difficult. All deaths make us feel shortchanged in some way. The unique problem for the stillbirth is that sometimes people don't accept that baby had value in its, I don't know, quantifiable terms. You know what I mean?
So tell the listeners, how often do you visit St. Charles Cemetery? And,
yeah.
and the second part is, why do you value having a funeral and a final resting place for Sophia? As you well know, that a lot of Christians today believe that laying a person at rest really doesn't have any value. They a lot of times put their loved ones in an urn up on the mantle, and which I've noticed that has caused a lot of problems for people who have gotten away from sacred tradition.
As far as the tradition of it, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I can comment on tradition, other than that I'm just so steeped in tradition that I probably didn't give it a second thought. To have a funeral was important to me and Tara because we wanted a place that we and others could go to see Sophia. It is now the only place that anybody can go to see her, and people do go. My parents go, my in-laws go. From time to time, somebody that we know in the quote-unquote St. Charles Cemetery neighborhood, from time to time people will leave a little flower for her or a little marker or something, So people do go. When Tara and I first were going, so 10 years ago, when Tara and I would first go to the cemetery, we used to leave by her marker I don't know, like dollar store bubbles or whatever, these little, kid bubbles, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And we used to have dozens of these bottles. We'd just keep at the house, and we'd go to the cemetery, and we'd blow bubbles, and we'd leave a bottle there, and we'd bump into people, like friends of ours maybe, and they'd say, oh, we were at the cemetery the other day, we blew bubbles for Sophia. And how is that not awesome? That's awesome, right? So I don't know anything about, or I should say I don't know enough to comment, if somebody wishes to have a cremation or whatever, or to have an urn, I think that maybe that has a special value or symbolic value to have that. But to me, and it was, again, a conflict, but because it was not really a public funeral, it was really just us, my wife and me and our parents and siblings. That was all, we didn't really notify anybody, and I go into that in the book a little bit as to how that was difficult, but it is public, and she's in a place, and it made us feel, I don't know, it was emotional, obviously, but I used to look forward to going. We would go every Saturday or Sunday, and we would just sit. And we would just sit, and if it rained, we sat in the car, and if it snowed, there were times I brought snow shovels to the cemetery, and shoveled out a little path and a little place for Tara and I to sit, and so we went to answer your question, I'm sorry, but we went every week, easily for, I don't know. I would say years, really. Now we've got 2 kids, and it is definitely harder. We started bringing our older daughter, Charlotte, when she was, not a baby anymore. Tara and I, when Charlotte was a baby, Tara and I would take turns, week to week. I'd stay home with the baby, Tara'd run over. Then Tara'd stay home with Charlotte, and I'd run over. We'd take turns. And that was difficult, not going with each other. We went for months and months and months and months. We went with each other, no matter what, right? And then all of a sudden we had to do it by ourselves, and we both had guilt issues, like, why don't we just get a babysitter? Why don't we just call her grandparents and let her, we should be going together, right? So this is just amazing that something that brought us so much joy as going to a cemetery then caused us guilt. So that's how chaotic the experience is, But obviously now the girls are older, and it's harder for us to, they're busy, they got swim, they got, gymnastics, they got this, that, and the other thing. So it's harder. So we go less frequent. That also was something we had to deal with, the guilt. We don't go anymore. I hope we're not forgetting her, things like that. But we are not forgetting her. That is something we had to, we just had to convince ourselves we are not forgetting her. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, from our own past experience when Michelle died, she was cremated, and we had the urn in the home. and we could see how the tension in the family grew and grew and grew. And a priest friend of ours said, Mike, you really need to bury her, lay her to rest. And in words, we're going to touch on language pretty soon, but certain words we take for granted. But yes, going to the cemetery, I get there by myself or with my mom or whoever, my wife, and we say prayers and maybe shed a tear or two. But it's an important step to the process of grieving and mourning. So as a parent, Mike, your belief gives you now value, right? As a kid, your sense of value then was unclear because you lacked a sort of wisdom to know the difference. Would that be correct to say?
Sure, yeah.
Right. Okay, good. So it's kind of, we're going to move into Gigi Ma soon. So, a lot of these questions are preemptive. So you said in the book, it seems to me that I hope for shared experiences of pain and recovery between me and Tara. At first, that's the case. Our loss seemed to be against us, against the world, affair until we had our first disagreement about whatever nonsense like dinner or front or back facing the toilet paper. Maybe it was something more substantial, intimacy or communication, or maybe something insensitive was said about feelings or loss or healing. But before long, our partners can at times seem like part of the world we were just recently combating together. Before long, our partners, in the tragedy of loss like ours, can seem so distant that we're not sure things could ever be the same again. So is it normal, would you say, that couples who have lost a loved one goes through this stage of grieving to recovery, that it's not unusual for couples to experience this sort of separation at times?
Oh, of course it's not unusual. No, of course not. It's not. It's not unusual. It is the standard, right? I mean, it is. It is what will happen, or should happen. In fact, I mean, needless to say, the death of a child can devastate couples, and I think it's one of the most common causes of a couple separating. I think money is number 2, and the death of a child is number 1. And again, you can look it up, but it's all I'm saying is it's up there, right? And so just like any of the experiences with grief, which are common, many of them can be problematic, right? So, you suffer the death of a child, and the first initial reactions are you're like cling to each other, and that feels good, and you say, wow, we really love each other, look how strong we're being, but that passes pretty quickly, right? And then you start to argue, and it might just be a normal argument that you would have had 6 weeks ago before your loss, and it would have made you think nothing about it, and you would have ended up ordering a pizza and having a glass of wine, or going for a walk, or whatever you do to remind each other that you're there for each other, right? But now all of a sudden everything is on high alert, and you have an argument, and you say, oh, that's because of our loss. See, we're angry at each other, right? So now that's normal. That's the standard, like I said. It's not unusual at all, but I think because that's one of the hard parts, and it feels like separation, it feels like, discord, I think that culturally we say, uh-oh, here we go. Now listen, if somebody is going to die, just get along. Do everything you can. Just get along. No. I mean, if you're going to disagree, right, Mike? It's like Tara and I have had 2 very different healing processes. We both heal in very different ways. Sometimes doing things differently together is better than making the other person do what you want to do. Or maybe that's always the case, right? I mean, I should never be making Tara, look, we got to do this, and trust me, I've said it, right? I've said, Tara, we got to do this. And it's like there should be alarm bells going off in my mouth saying, no. She doesn't have to do anything. Just do with each other and be together. And I think that's, I hope our process now is support each other, be with each other, love each other. It's all right for us to be different and to do things differently. She says, I was talking. I gave a talk a week ago on grief, and my wife comes with me, and it's difficult for her to attend something like this because it's sad, and it's she has to go through it again, right? So I just said to her, I said, I just want to say thanks for coming and always being okay with this, And she says, I'm not okay with it. She's like, I'm not okay with it. I come with you. I support you, but it hurts. And I could never do it, right? That's what she says. I could never talk to people the way you talk to people about this. And I said, well, that's all right, that's all right. So we have two, and it's strange because we culturally think of separation as some kind of exclusivity, like when we are separate, we are just on different planets and we can't even talk, right? And it's scary to have that feeling. But in our marriage, I think, and this is probably more me than Tara, I'm the pig-headed one, I had to realize she doesn't have to go through this the same way I do. And I think when we learn that, healing and coping is better. Don't be afraid of the disagreements. Be afraid of yelling and screaming. Be afraid of leaving the house. Things like that. Those things bothered me, but in the end, stay together.
So on page 29, you comment on thinking is a petri dish for every guilt created, every shame felt, but at the same token, you say that it comes it basically generates a saving grace. It's the place where our intellection is able to, through that wisdom, to know the difference, understand that there's graces and hope that are realized. But why do you feel that most people generally feel guilty after losing a loved one?
Well, I think it's probably got to do with responsibility, that we feel responsible. And in cases where we're not responsible, where there's no possible, nothing that you could say you're responsible for, you feel, a lost connection or opportunity, I don't know, a parent dies, and you say that that's a natural thing and everybody should be okay with that. But what if I didn't get to say I love you? What if, and let's say I said I love you every day for forever, right? But on the day mom or dad passes, I didn't get to say I love you that day. That's a feeling of loss. Yeah. And while it's not guilt in the, I caused this, as a, right? It's guilt as in I feel bad because something's incomplete, Would my saying I love you have made that person's passing better? We feel responsible in some way. Why is it? I don't know. Maybe we feel responsible for all loss. No man is an island. John Donne, right? No man is an island. We feel loss. A part of us dies. A part of us suffers, and maybe the physical guilt of another manifests itself in us as feelings of guilt.
Yeah. I got a chuckle out of your story of losing your Mako Shark Corvette Matchbox. See, I lost my marbles at an early age.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I could feel for you because matchboxes were very dear to me. But on page 58, I was really struck by this, paraphrasing your pastor's homily on Christmas. You said that what he says, thanks for coming, even though I know how bad you're hurting right now, how much you think your prayers failed you, how much your attendance at church did nothing for you, how much the church or your faith failed you, how much God failed you. Thanks for coming, because somehow I'm willing to bet we both know that the help you're looking for is still here in church with these parishioners and all of their pains and losses and sorrows. The abandonment you feel is helped here. Thank you for being with us. So, Mike, why do you believe, if you do, why is fellowship in Holy Mother Church important in the process of recovery, whether grieving the loss of a loved one or from others, some kind of traumatic experience or behavior that is unbecoming?
Mm-hmm. Right. That's right. Or behavior that's unbecoming. That's right. I don't know, and I will. But I will say that, I don't know. In your introductory remarks, you talked about, you said something about unity, right? So you can find unity in lots of places. You might have a tight-knit, network group of people that you work with, maybe your family, right? But, I think that unity is important, and it's good to have a network, and it's good to have your group, and I have my group. I had my group at the time, although sometimes you are not certain you have that group. If the death of a child can throw that into doubt, right? Okay, the relationships can sometimes become tricky, right? But Tara and I had each other. I think we had our families, which were all important for us, right? Okay, so let's just imagine it's like, I don't know, I'm writing a book, okay? So I don't know, when I was 20 years old, I wrote a little story, and I who do I show it to? I show it to my sister. I show it to my mother, and oh, it's so nice, they love it. So if that's your network, your family, your friends, the people that are closest to you, that's important and you need it. But to me, the community network, for example, a church, is the next step. It's the chance you get to go outside of that they're going to love you no matter what group. You know what I mean? In many respects, in this respect, in my experience, the church, right, going to church on those times where I said this, they're here for me, or that Christmas Mass specifically, they don't have to love me. They don't have to accept me the way my family does. They're strangers. But those strangers, for some reason, care. And that's good to know, I think, or it was good for me to know that there were people who didn't have to love me, still cared, and that was important.
So can we draw parallels between church and a person's nakedness?
How so? How do you mean?
Well, we come to church to be healed, to be uplifted. And with that being said, we come in from a position of falling. So our nakedness is fallen, and it's only through receiving the sacrament of reconciliation and the Eucharist that our nakedness is made whole by the body of Christ.
Yes. Well, Mike, right? So if you remember, and we were just talking about it before, but in that very the prologue, the opening, the very beginning, I talk about having an understanding of the title of this book. Where are you? And that's from the Genesis story, where God says, hey, where'd you go? And he's looking for Adam and Eve, and they're hiding naked. They're hiding because they were ashamed of their nakedness. So that's, quite literally what you're saying right now is, in biblical terms, or in the terms of the church, that faith can call us from shame and help us with those feelings, without a doubt.
And it helps us to examine our conscience. So, Mike, on page 65, you spoke about your great-grandma, right? Am I saying that now? Right?
Yes, but she is my grandmother. She's my grandmother, but when she started having grandchildren, she became great-grandma Gigi, so we called her Gigi Ma, yes.
Yeah. And having 9 children of her own, and she had lost 2.
Yes, that's right.
her last words of faith were, "Your baby is still with you, Michael. She'll always be with you. She's with the saints and angels now, and they are always with us. I know it." Gigi, Ma, did she give you a sense of courage? You believe today because she believed?
I, without a doubt, I think that, I wish everyone could have met my grandmother.
Yeah.
She is special, She was just that kind of a woman, and she was strong and courageous and smart and funny, and everybody thinks of their grandparents this way. I get it, and I agree. And I'm not saying my grandmother's any better than anybody else's grandma, but she was a card, She was a character, and people that met her knew there was something about her, And yes, she was courageous, and I would like to think that a lot of my heart comes from her.
Right.
That it's she was a pretty special person.
So on that same page, you saw your grandma last in the hospital, and you write here, you were walking down to the car where Tara and Charlotte were waiting. You said, "I should have told them to go home, and I'll wait to see my grandma die, like I maybe owe it to her, but I also owe it to be with my immediate family." So my question is, what value did you place upon that decision that made it the right decision for you at the time?
Ooh. Wow. All right. So the conflict at that time is okay, so my grandmother is dying, and I want to be with her, but I also have a wife and a baby in the car waiting for me. Now, in hindsight, maybe I could have planned it better, and it wouldn't have been a conflict, but I'm not a very good planner, I guess. But so the conflict is, do I stay here and wait for my grandmother to pass, or do I go live with my baby and my wife? Now, keep in mind, this is all sort of retrospective, right? I can't imagine that I was really thinking it at the time, but now thinking back, and that was the conflict. And in a strange way, maybe that's now it's a couple years, obviously, a few years after we have lost Sophia. Charlotte is, I would say she's about a year and a half, maybe, or so. I don't exactly remember, right? But in a strange way, it's like, okay, Gigi Ma is passing, but I said goodbye. I told her I loved her. I give her a kiss. She's got people with her. In a strange way, it was like a demonstration of letting go and holding on to what I have. And maybe I beat myself up about it at times, but in the end, it was a good goodbye, and the number one place for me to be is with Tara and my kids. And so,
So we can draw a parallel between God does for us what we cannot do for ourselves, in the sense that when you make that decision, the same decision I had to make with my sister, we won't go into that right now, but there are some certain responsibilities and duties, as you've already spoken about, that God helps us to make decisions. Even though we possess free will, I do believe that God is doing for us what we can at the time do for ourselves, because it is so emotionally charged.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why did you state that there are some people who really know it's okay to die? In your opinion, what spiritual qualities does a terminally ill patient have that allows them to move forward in your journey to depart this world?
I don't know. I say I don't know, and then I give a 5-minute answer. What are my thoughts? My grandmother was uniquely, spiritually in touch, and I couldn't begin to explain it really because that's what being so spiritually in touch is. I mean, she was devout.
Yeah.
But she was very, 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 very smart, very, very, very thoughtful. Read, right? Read the Bible as much as she would read, science journals. She taught herself calculus. You know what I mean? She was just a really smart, worldly person, but her faith was above all things. And I remember talking to my dad about it, and my dad said she was ready. She was ready to go with God. And look, I tell you that I believe in God. I tell you that I believe in heaven. I tell you, that I believe Sophia's in a place, and I believe Gigi Ma's in a place, right? That's a song I sing, and someday it will be time for me, and I'll let you know how much I believe it then. It's scary. I think that going to the unknown, I mean, like I said, I'm Catholic, but I don't know where, I would place my faith, what number out of 10, because it's hard, but I'm probably in the middle somewhere, that I'm trying and I'm searching and I'm struggling and all that kind of a thing. And when you're up against death, I mean, you got to ask yourself, is heaven going to be there for me? And I think only a few of the most faithful, devout, and centered people can really accept that. I hope to be that way. I hope I have a long time to work on it. But there are people that believe truly in the soul, and it's a work. I think that you have to work on it.
And in one of the lines, it's reference from John 16:30, that God does not ask us to understand, but just to believe. And I think that, when you talked about your grandma, how they took the two babies away and she didn't even get a chance to see them or hold them, there's a sense of belief there, a faith that is, as you would say, it's filled with courage, and also the wisdom to know the difference, that they just continue to move forward and to do what they can. It's like you did when you were walking down from the hospital. What's immediate? What's my number one priority today? And
right.
This is what I have to tend to. And we're all faced with those kinds of decisions. So on page 68, you said that you hope that the power of the human soul contains actual hope for eternal joy and peace, referring to your friend Brian Doyle, who believed right up to his own departure. Is that what you believe today, that the human soul does contain an eternal sense of joy?
Well, absolutely. I mean, yes, that's a short answer. Yes, I do believe that, but death, grief throws that into question for sure. We are all, I would like to think that we are all at times in our lives, Thomas, doubting,
Right, but that's also an answer to why you and Tara released the doves.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that's what to continue that healing process. Is that correct?
Without a doubt. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I found it very moving. I've been in your position before, that your career choice as a teacher enabled you to become, at times, a kind of like a bereaved counselor. You're able to identify with those who have or are having suffering a loss, particularly the story that you mentioned of the student's mother who is worried about her son, who lost his dad and struggling with his grief. Are you able to offer a sense? Well, you're able to offer a sense of realism to those hurting when you said, which I thought was very, very, very to the point. Again, it's that man touching the finger of God. Go ahead and cry. And do you want to really stop crying? Which was a rhetorical question, which to me, it just demonstrates your willingness to be, in a sense, naked, vulnerable, but also offering up to help somebody else that, is going through some kind of crisis in their own life?
Well, I remember that conference with that parent vividly, and I'll never forget it. And what I remember even more so than the conversation that she and I had is that, it was my heart was pounding as she's talking, and I can see she is looking to have an experience with someone. She's looking for some kind of connection. I could see it. I could feel it. My heart's pounding because I have something to tell her. I just tell her about my brother. Tell her about his death and my feelings. Just tell her. That's the nakedness, right? That's the shame. Oh, but I better not. It's not appropriate. She's here for her son. Don't tell her about my problems. But my heart is pounding. What about, the potential to make a connection with somebody?
Right. A difference.
Here this woman is struggling, and maybe I could reach out and say, hey, I hear you, and so I took a chance, and I said so. So I told her quickly about my brother, and I don't know if it resolved anything, right? I don't know if I don't remember what happened to the kid. He could have failed for all I remember. I really don't, But I know he must have been going through a world of hurt, and the mother was too. And I would like to think that she remembers the conversation. I don't know. I just had a really, really. I'm sorry. Can I just say something, or are we on time?
Yeah. Well, we have about maybe I'll stretch it to another 30 minutes. I know Sebastian's pulling his hair out, but he's just, he's going to have to deal.
All right. Well, my point is, I'll make it very quick. The other night, I gave a talk about grief, and somebody from the audience came up to me and said, "Hey, I don't know if you remember, but," and he remembered my brother.
Yeah.
And it was. It was profound, and it's those little human connections. And I think in the end, why I'm writing a book is because those connections thrill me, and I hope to make connections through this book. I'm introducing people to my daughter, and if my experience with grief can help anybody, that's wonderful. But first and foremost, this is my baby.
So Sophia's departure has enabled you, as you wrote on page 72, that Brian, your brother's death, is becoming clearer in your healing process. That it's like full circle. So Sophia is basically helping you to find closure with your brother.
I love to think of it that way, yes. To think of my little girl helping me do something is empowering, yes.
Right. So it's a legacy. So, Mike, do you think that the power of the human soul not to forget is a gift from the Holy Spirit, which would make us the center of creation, that we are created with a purpose?
Well, it feels like a curse, I'll tell you that much at first, right? It feels like a curse, right? I can assure you, I've asked myself a million times, why can't I just forget? If I just forgot, it wouldn't hurt anymore, But yes, without a doubt, remembering is absolutely a blessing. And I thank God that I remember the things that I've been able to remember, and I'm sad about the things I forget. There are things about my brother Brian that, I say, I wish I remembered that, And after the initial injury of loss, that's another set of injuries, forgetting things. Do I really remember the sound of his voice? What I mean? And that's tough. I remember Tara after we lost the baby. I remember her saying, I'm afraid I'll forget what she looks like. And I say, you'll never forget what she looks like because we have a picture of her, an actual picture of her. And so you won't. But it does. If it weren't for that picture, you might. You know, and that forgetting. In the end, after all, that forgetting makes death even more permanent than you thought it was. You know what I mean?
So tell our listeners how powerful was it for you and Tara to see Sophia's name written in the sands that others actually did get to see.
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, it was awesome. I remember the first person we saw is a friend of ours who we knew in a bereavement group. She had her daughter's name written in the sand, and we said, "Oh man, that's beautiful." And so we go on this website and we sent in our name, and when it came up, So that's the thing, right? So a minute ago I say forgetting makes death seem more permanent than it even was in the first place. So any remembrance, anything that you can get that helps you remember, so it's a name in the sand or I don't know, a bracelet or anything like that you have that will make it permanent, makes you feel better. I mean, obviously you have to recognize that it's not a replacement, of course, but it does help. Yes.
Good. We have about maybe 20, 25 more minutes, Mike. So
Okay.
I have 2.5 pages left to go, and I really have a mission here, and I kind of laugh about that. But there is a means to my madness with some of this. So you talk about Sophia's departure. That's given you a balance. What do you mean by balance on page 80? And you say it's how it's making you better.
Oh, now you're really pushing me. I got to remember my own manuscript now.
Can I tell you a quick joke? Just when I run my bereavement meetings and people read the steps, they are so overwhelmed. They said, "You wrote this?" I said, "Well, I know. I don't even believe it myself, and my wife doesn't believe it either."
Right. That's funny. But you're right. You realize that you put everything down in a book, and I will tell you, I don't have a great memory in the first place, right? But you realize that I am realizing that everything I put down in the book, I said, first of all, it was written back over the summer, August. So we're pushing a year now, and I'm forgetting a lot of what I wrote. But the balance that you're asking about is. I am feeling that I suffer anxiety less in these past couple of years than I did in the previous several, right? So what I'm talking now anxiety to me is a feeling of imbalance, right? It has physical symptoms, obviously, and so I'm feeling that less. I would like to think that writing this book has made me more thoughtful. I've challenged myself, and I have been challenged by others to consider my actions and my thoughts. And I would like to think that, I mean, in a crazy way. And I wish it didn't have to be this way. And this is part of the healing process. I wish that I had all 3 of my girls here with me. You know what I mean? But in a way, is it possible that my baby is helping me find balance and peace? I would love for that to be true, yes.
Yes. We don't have much time to talk about your toy drive, but folks listening, the folks that are listening, Mike has a toy drive with Tara. Could you give us that contact number and the time and the location so people who want to participate can?
Well, I'll tell you what, the best thing to do is probably just my email address is michaeljflood01 @gmail.com. We do it every December. It is a Toys for Tots toy drive. We donate all of the toys to Toys for Tots. We host it at a local Knights of Columbus. If anybody's in the area or wants to mail, I don't know, send me an email in October or November, and we'd love to have you. But really, I hope even more so than collecting toys is for people to realize, you don't know, Mike, you don't know how many people have come to this thing and said, I didn't realize people do this.
Yeah.
Like we're celebrating our baby, and it's her legacy, you know. And a lot of people come. I didn't realize you could remember your loss this way, you know.
So here's a question on page 85. You said, I have to be okay with the idea that Sophia's memory inspires me to do rather than to tear down or destroy or to withdraw. So, Mike, can you synthesize any parallels between the sense of responsibility or duty when you made your decision to return back to Tara and Charlotte, who were sitting in the car waiting for you at the hospital, and how your your grandmother continued moving forward even after having lost two of her own children? Is it a sense of faith and trust that inspires you to move forward in these decisions, or?
Yes. Short answer, yes. Faith, trust, I think both, and I'll use the word again, and I hope it's not cliche, and, you know, but it's love, you know, that saying leaving my grandmother that night to go be with my wife and my daughter, both were acts of love, you know. And I think that if you've got a multiple choice and all four choices are love, you can't go wrong, you know. It would be different if I was neglectful, if I didn't want to say goodbye to my grandmother and was avoiding her in some way, or if I wanted to stay with my grandmother because I was avoiding my family, you know, then that would be the problem, right? But both, and the way I rationalize or justify or you know, get a grip on that conflict at the time was to say, I love my wife and I love my kid and I want to go. I'm going to go. And I love my grandmother and I gave her a hug and a kiss. And as far as goodbyes go, that might have been as good as it could get, you know.
I want to talk about the importance of Ivy Diamond's bereavement group being such a big help. Why is it important to have a spiritual director leading these groups? And why do you believe that Ivy continued to relive the pain associated with the death of her own loved one, but still continue to offer up her time and insight to bereaved parties? Is that the same thing that you're doing with the toy drive?
I would say, yeah, sure. And again, it's got to do with remembrance, you know. We have enough, I think we have enough horrifying thoughts of our losses, of the damage the loss has done in our lives. I think we've got enough of that. So when you have a chance to live it well, right, and remember your loss in a productive way, it can be hugely beneficial. And I think, I mean, I would be speaking obviously for her, you know, and I shouldn't do that, but I would expect that Ivy recognizes that her loss is helping others, and that is a great outcome, you know. And so, yes, the toy drive or this book, or on the few occasions where I've been able to deliver an address to a bereavement group or something, yeah, I would like to think that I am helping myself by remembering my daughter and helping others by, you know, being present, you know, being part of a group that other people can feel comfort in. You know what I mean?
So, as you commented that Sophia's departure opened your narrow lens to a broader lens to see tragedy in a better way. So, in a sense, you're looking at things like Ivory Diamond has or does, or like a grandmother,
Without a doubt. So, so you know, and now your question a minute ago was, why is it necessary, say, to have a spiritual or group director, bereavement director, somebody like that? Because it's a model, you know, it's an example, right? There are plenty of people who suffer something or do something wrong or have something in their lives that go wrong, and maybe they go out with their drinking buddies. You know, what model is that? You know, maybe maybe all they do is go to work, bury themselves at work. You know, and I'm not judging those things necessarily, right? But the point is, as far as dealing with grief, experiencing grief, what is the model? And I believe that Ivy provided us a model of goodness and care, and yes, I think that that's what such a person can do for the bereaved.
Right, and in my own groups, I try to select certain phrases or words to give a more of an objective understanding, and that's where you talk about language defines reality in certain perspectives. So if we're using certain words or phrases rather than death and dying, like I like to use the word departure, because really departure is really more of a the actual sense of a person, where our Catholic faith helps us to understand that the body dies, but the spirit lives for all eternity, whether it's hell or in heaven. But
that's right.
Through the second coming of Christ, we're going to be rejoined with our bodies again. So when you really kind of think about it, it's kind of a departure. It's kind of, I say this sometimes in the groups, that it's like almost in a sense a bus trip. Where my son is right now in Nebraska, and we talk, but we don't see him.
Right.
So there is a sense of departure, but we know he's still there in our lives. So you did comment that language can be at times subjective, but I think what I hear from you is that you're becoming more objective in your understanding on how words define certain feelings, places, and things, events, circumstances, and that having this wisdom to know the difference gives you more of a latitude to open up that lens a little bit more. Would you say that's true?
Without a doubt, yeah. I mean, the words matter. Words matter. You find, in our house, Tara and I, when we had our kids and we started, of course it's not perfect, but we tried really hard, to instill in our kids, don't say hate. If you don't like something, say you don't like it. That's fine, but don't say hate, We just don't want to use the word because it's so heavy, and words matter. That, somebody who says, I hate this, I hate that, I hate this, and you say hate 30, 40, 50 times a day, well, there's a chance you might not be feeling so good about things, you know what I mean? I think words absolutely matter. I think the words we use affect us, but and I do talk about this in the book. I mean, you can't lie to yourself, obviously, and people do that. I do that, or have done that, absolutely. You tell yourself something that is probably not true, For example, I'm fine. I'm fine. How many times I said that over the years? I'm fine. Everything's good. I'm fine. But Mike, you're getting angry at everything. Mike, you're having anxiety. Mike, you're stressed out. Mike, you're moody. I'm fine. I'm fine. Leave me alone. I'm fine. You know what I mean? So that's a lie. Right? I didn't really believe what I said. So your words mean something. Your words matter if you mean them, I guess, is probably the better way to say that, right?
So this predisposition to sadness that you talked about in the beginning of the book is basically slowly changing for the better, because your understanding, your sense of compassion for others is more of a prophetic nature. Would you say that's true?
Well, I hope, yes. I mean, I hope, yeah.
Right. So on Father Spitzer on EWTN, which I watch him as often as I can, says the highest virtue is compassion for others, and compassion in of itself is a reciprocation, or reciprocates, reflects, or is God's nature, the command to love Him with all our hearts and those others. So like you said, we're not a man on an island. When we love another, we are fulfilling that commandment, which reciprocates or reflects the Trinitarian love between Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. So how important was Uncle Dan's Smile Factory? He for a long time, he for as long as we have today, it is the best day of my life. So do you have any more smile days than before?
Well, that's a lot of years between then and now, and a lot of forgetting that message for sure, I mean, I feel like after all is said and done, I have dealt with some pretty profound sadness, and even beyond dealing with loss, But I tell my kids to walk through the Smile Factory. My children, my daughters. I say up, walk through the Smile Factory. Come on. And that's a tribute to my uncle, So someday I'll share with him the story, or maybe he'll just read the book, and he'll see how much of an impact that has had on me. And that story is easily, 30-something years old, That happened 30-something years ago, I'm sure, and I'll never forget it. And the idea that you can choose joy. It's become a cliche these days, but it's real. You can choose joy. Now, it's easier for some people than others. I get that, but you can make efforts to choose. You know what I mean?
So, from what I hear from you, Mike, is that writing in itself is therapeutic for many reasons, because it has. You say that your mind has changed in its focus. That writing has reoriented you. Even with your memories of your brother Brian. So can you speak about how powerful the writing process has contributed to your healing?
Well, I think that lots of people that struggle with any kind of depression, anxiety, I'm sure there is a long list of methods to address the sadness. I would bet that on anybody's list is going to be write down your thoughts, keep a journal, and I don't know why it helps, but it does, and it did, and does it just put things into order? Sometimes I'll write down something I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, that's really ridiculous. It's almost like it gives you almost like a third-person perspective of what your thoughts are, and you write them down, and you see them on a page. You say, oh, wow, I really was acting like a child. So maybe that's part of it. I think in this particular case, that's part of it for writing in general, but in this particular case, for my baby, this is her legacy. She is not alive in the sense that I get to hold her, and I wish that I did, and I'm sad that I can't. But she's alive in different ways, and this book maybe is one of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So we're going to finish it up with two more questions, Mike.
Okay.
Why do you believe that God speaks to us in miracles? What I mean by this is that, do you see God working in your life in simple reminders of your daughter through other people, conversations, times of year, that brings you comfort and courage to carry the message of hope and unity to family members, friends, and students and strangers?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, as far as miracles are concerned, I don't, I feel like miracles exist to remind us that there's more to all of this than what we can see and know, right? Mm-hmm. Miracles are not things that I am, inclined to wish for. Miracles are beyond my power to wish or hope, I guess, So let's think of miracles like you said, an exchange, for example. I see somebody and am able to think of my daughter. That is a reminder. Yes, one time my wife and I were at the beach, and we see a woman setting up those. You ever see those little paper like hot air balloons? You put a little tea candle, whatever you call it, tea light, and it floats the paper bag up, right? Yeah. And they glow and they look pretty, right? So we're walking out off the beach, and it's probably about 8 o'clock, 7:30 one summer evening. This woman walks up, and I don't know what made us stop. We saw her carrying a couple of bags, parcels, whatever, and we stopped and looked at her. Like, why? People come often on the beach, thousands of people at a time, and it's nobody's business. But for some reason, Tara and I stopped. And we watched this woman set up start setting her things up. And Tara, now Tara is not typically like this. She doesn't get involved in people's business, And she walked over to this woman, and I was with Charlotte and Judith, so I was kind of like watching them, and I see Tara talking to this woman, and she was lighting this hot air balloon thing as a memorial. And to me, that's an opportunity to have talked about Sophia and say, well, we lost a baby. This sounds like such a great idea. Maybe we'll do it. I don't know if is that an according to Hoyle miracle or not, but that was a hello from our angel. That was a reminder. So if that's what you mean, then absolutely yes.
Yeah, and a lot of times when I'm on the job, I do very physical labor. There's many times when I've just about had it, I find a penny or two, out of nowhere, and it just stops me, and I say, I thank God that, I say, hey, Michelle, so God is, again, doing for me what I cannot do for myself, and showing me that I'm not alone.
I, many years ago, I was talking to my parents at dinner, and I was upset. I was freaking out, really, because of questions about my brother and things that were unresolved. And I was probably 19 or something years old, and I was really struggling. And my brother used to carry around this backpack, always, everywhere. He had it everywhere. It was, just a knapsack, whatever you call it. And he just had his stuff in it, and he would ride around town on his bike all day long. Everywhere he'd go, he had this backpack. And I said, it's not fair. Like, there's so many things, and I'm talking to my parents. I said, there's so many things I want to know. Like, where did his backpack go? What happened? He had that all the time. Where'd it go? Now the question is, did somebody steal it? Did somebody harm him and steal his backpack? So that was, whatever. I'm telling you, we went out. We were out at dinner, right? We're talking about this. We get home from dinner, Mike. This is easily a year or two after my brother died, right?
Mm.
We get home. What is on the steps of my house? The backpack.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, that is, to me, that's mind-boggling. That's crazy. That's out there, And somebody called the next day. Somebody called our house. My brother's wallet was in the bag. He called the phone number and the address, and he called. And I remember answering the phone, and I was just like, you better talk to my mom. But he said he found the bag, and my mom had to tell this poor guy what happened to my brother, and how hard that must have been for my mother, But to me, I can't understand that in any other way than a miraculous hello,
Yeah. Well, Mike, that winds it up for us today. It's been a real joy listening to your insights and perspectives. I hope
it's my pleasure, Mike.
Yeah, if you don't mind. I end each program with petitions of prayer, and then I say an Our Father, a Hail Mary, and a Glory Be. Would you like to join me?
I'd love that. No problem.
Okay,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'll go first with the petition, then you, and then we'll recite Our Father together. So,
you got it.
The Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen.
Amen.
Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity through Bereavement Miracles to talk to Mike Flood in remembrance of his daughter Sophia, as well as Charlotte and Judith and Tara. Mike is a channel of your peace, Lord, and thank you for helping him spread the good news throughout this world that is really having much difficulty. Help and strengthen Mike and his wife and his children and all those around him to not be afraid. And you have given up your only begotten Son to help us to be able to say that and to witness that day in and day out. I do pray for my wife to get better. I pray for our son, our daughter. I pray for our Holy Catholic Church, the Pope, priests, deacons, all religious, but particularly, Father, for all those that have fallen away from going to church. And I do want to say thank you for allowing me to speak to Mike today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
You can go ahead, Mike, if you'd like to.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Just my daily petition my wife and my girls, my angel baby Sophia, my brother Brian, my loved ones, my family, my parents, my siblings, my awesome in-laws, my wife's parents, and my brother-in-law and his wife and baby, my network of supporters and loved ones. Thank you, God, for all of them and for this opportunity.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be
thy name.
Thy kingdom
come, thy
will be done on earth as
it is in heaven.
Give us
this day our daily bread,
and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary,
Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Glory be to the
Father, and to the Son,
and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the
beginning, is now,
and ever shall
be, world without end.
Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Mike, thank you. God bless you. And we'll talk again.
All right, Mike. It was my pleasure. Thank you so much. You take care, all right?
Yeah, thank you.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.